Most people know the names of Caribbean pirates, but the most successful pirate in world history was a woman who many have never heard of. Her name was Qin Shi. For comparison, Blackbeard's fleet at its peak consisted of 4 ships and 300 men. Under Qin Shi's command were more than 1,800 vessels and an army of 80,000 pirates, a force comparable to the navy of an entire nation. Unlike the famous male pirates, she did not end her life on the gallows or in battle. Qin Shi retired with a vast fortune, received a full pardon from the emperor, and died a wealthy woman in her own bed. This is the story of how a former prostitute built a pirate empire, stood against the Qin dynasty, and forced European trading companies to pay her tribute. Our story begins in the south of China, in Guangdong province, at the end of the 18th century. The Pearl River Delta was a labyrinth of waterways perfectly suited for trade, smuggling, and piracy. The authority of the ruling Qin dynasty was weak here, and the true masters of the waters were often pirates. It was here, in one of the floating brothels of Canton, that a woman named Shi Xianggu worked. Little is known about her early life aside from her profession. However, she possessed not only beauty, but also a sharp-minded ambition. Situated at the center of the port city's information flows, she observed how deals were made and how power operated. In 1701, her life changed dramatically. The fleet of the influential pirate Zheng Yi raided Canton and captured women from the flower boats. Among them, Shi Xianggu. According to legend, Zheng Yi was impressed by her audacity and decided to marry her. Shi Xianggu, in turn, saw this as an opportunity and, according to one version, agreed to the marriage on the condition that she would receive equal rights in commanding the fleet and a share of the plunder. Zheng Yi agreed, likely seeing in her not just a wife, but an equal partner and strategist. Shi Xianggu became known as Zheng Yi Seo, wife of Zheng Yi. Together, they became an effective team. Zheng Yi was a charismatic warrior, and his wife was a talented organizer. Over the next 6 years, they united the 6 major pirate fleets of Guangdong into the Red Flag Fleet Confederation. Each fleet had its own color, and the most powerful was their own, the Red. It was a structured organization with a common treasury and a system of governance. In 1707, at the height of his power, Zheng Yi died during a typhoon. For any other pirate alliance, this would have meant collapse and a struggle for power. But Zheng Yi Sao made a decisive and strategically sound move. Understanding that as a woman it would be difficult to hold power alone, she formed an alliance with Zhang Baozai, the adopted son of her late husband. Zhang Baozai was a young and popular commander who was respected among the pirates. Qin Shi entered into a relationship with him and then married him. This political union secured her the loyalty of the warriors, and for him, it secured her strategic mind and legitimacy. Together, they consolidated their power and no one dared to challenge them. Thus, the widow of Zheng Yi became the full-fledged ruler of the Pirate Confederation, known as Qin Shi. Having gained power, Qin Shi introduced a code of laws that transformed her army of brigands into a disciplined force. This code was the key to her success. Centralization of power. Any order from Qin Shi or her commanders was to be executed without question. Disobedience was punished by immediate execution. Control over the loot. Pirates were forbidden to keep any of the plunder for themselves. All loot was turned over to a common treasury. After being accounted for, 20% was returned to the crew of the vessel that captured it, and the remaining 80% went into a general fund for ship repairs, weapons, procurement, and provisions. This prevented internal conflicts and turned raiding into a well-oiled business. Discipline on land. Pirates were forbidden to attack peaceful villagers in areas that paid the Confederation tribute for protection. Violating this rule was punishable by death. In this way, Qin Shi created a shadow system of taxation that, for many settlements, was preferable to the corrupt imperial officials. Treatment of female captives. Violence against female prisoners was punishable by death. If a pirate wanted to take a woman as his wife, he had to obtain her consent and remain faithful to her. Infidelity was also punished by death. This law was unprecedented in the pirate world and helped maintain order. This code transformed the Red Flag Fleet into the most organized force on the coast of China. They controlled the shipping lanes, and no merchant ship could pass through the mouth of the Pearl River without buying a pass from Qin Shi that guaranteed safe passage. The jockeying emperor could no longer tolerate the existence of a pirate state and sent the imperial fleet to destroy it. However, this led to a series of humiliating defeats for the Qing dynasty. The pirates, who knew the local waters perfectly, lured the cumbersome imperial junks into shallows and narrow channels where they could easily be destroyed. A huge fleet under the command of Admiral Guo Lan was crushed, and the admiral himself committed suicide. Qin Shi proved to be a brilliant naval tactician using intelligence, deceptive maneuvers, and psychological pressure. In desperation, the Chinese government hired the Portuguese fleet based in Macau. Despite the technical superiority of the European ships, in 1809, Qin Shi's fleet engaged them in battle. The pirates overwhelmed them with sheer numbers and boarding tactics, and eventually, the Portuguese squadron was forced to retreat. In effect, Qin Shi also stood against the British Empire. Its merchant ships from the East India Company also paid tribute for the right to trade in the region. Thus, the former prostitutes successfully confronted the forces of three empires, Qing China, Portugal, and indirectly, Britain. But Qin Shi understood that she could not fight the whole world forever. At the peak of her power, she decided to take her final, most far-sighted step to negotiate peace on her own terms. The Chinese government, convinced of the failure of a military solution, offered the pirates amnesty. Qin Shi was in no hurry to accept standard terms. The Governor-General of Guangdong, Bai Ling, entered into personal negotiations with her. In 1810, Qin Shi arrived in Canton for negotiations. She appeared at the Governor-General's residence unarmed, accompanied only by 17 women and children. This was a powerful psychological move, demonstrating her confidence and peaceful intentions. Her demands were unprecedented: full amnesty for herself and all of her people, the right to keep all of their plundered wealth. Zhang Baozai was to be given a high-ranking post in the Imperial Navy with the right to command his own personal squadron. The government had to officially recognize her marriage to Zhang Baozai. After tense negotiations, during which Qin Shi essentially staged a sit-in at the governor's office, he was forced to agree to all her terms. This was not a surrender, but an honorable capitulation on the victor's terms. Tens of thousands of pirates came ashore and received pardons. Zhang Baozai became a high-ranking officer and successfully fought against other pirates. And Qin Shi, having received a noble title, retired. With her riches, she settled in Canton where, according to some sources, she opened a gambling house. Qin Shi died in 1844 at the age of 69, in her own bed, surrounded by her family, a wealthy and free woman. The story of Qin Shi is less known in the West for several reasons. Because of the Eurocentrism of popular culture, the reluctance of Chinese imperial historians to glorify a woman who had dealt them such a humiliation, and the gender biases of the time. Nevertheless, the facts speak for themselves. No pirate in history ever commanded such a fleet and such an army. No one built such an effective organization or simultaneously stood against 3 empires. And certainly, no one managed to end their career so successfully. While Blackbeard was killed and Calico Jack was hanged, Qin Shi outplayed them all and secured for herself a peaceful and prosperous old age.